St. Joseph College for Women, Autonomous, Vishakhapatnam. Welcome to St. Joseph's open web-based learning platform. So e-learn for a soulful and enriching e-learning experience. Department of Commerce and Management presents SMOOC, St. Joseph Massive Open Online Course. I, Dr. K. Rajani, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce and Management, St. Joseph College for Women, Autonomous, Vishakhapatnam, presents Module 2, Economic Theory. Let's start with Chapter 2.3, Microeconomics. Contents of Chapter 2.3 are meaning and importance of demand, factors determining demand, types of demand, demand function and law of demand, and last one is elasticity of demand. Outcome of the Chapter 2.3, the students will be able to accurately define demand and describe the law of demand, and to understand key terms like quantity demanded, demand schedule, demand curve, and law of demand. And third one, to define and distinguish between price, income, and cross elasticity of demand. And next, to interpret elasticity coefficients like elastic, inelastic, and unitary elasticity of demand. And last one, to apply elasticity concepts to real world pricing and business decisions. Now let's start with the introduction of demand. Now we'll discuss with the three terms: demand, desire, and want. These three terms are commonly referred as same, but in economics these three terms are different: desire, demand, and wants. Desire is nothing but wish to have a commodity or a service. Okay, a person have a 10 rupees in his pocket. He desired to have a car with that money. No, we couldn't get it. So desire for to buy a car, but he is unable to afford it to buy that car. So this is called as desire. Next, want. Want means the person have enough money to buy a car. He finished his dream. Okay, so wants are different, desires are different. So whenever the person have a ability to buy a particular thing or a commodity or a product, he fulfilled his desires and wants. That is the difference between desire and want. Next, coming to demand. Demand means sometimes her desires, the people desires to become a demands when they have a ability to acquire to acquire those things and satisfy their desires and wants. In economics, demand refers to the quantity of a good or services that consumers are willing and able to buy at a various prices or a given period of time. So demand is different from want. Okay, desires become effective demand when it is backed by ability and willing to pay for the commodity. Demand may be defined amount of commodity purchased by a person at a given point of time at a given price. So thus demand includes a desire to get a commodity, a means to buy it, and the willing to use those means. Demand is always at a point of time. It is always at a price. So it means there cannot be a demand for free commodity like air, sunshine, etc. Okay. And according to Benham, the definition of demand is demand for anything at a given price is the amount of it which will be bought per unit of time at that price is called as demand. And another definition by Bobber is a demand we mean the various quantities of a given commodities or services which consumers would buy in one market at a given period of time at a various prices. What are the requisites for demand? A desire for a specific commodity, a sufficient resources to purchase the desired commodity, and the willing to spend the resources and the availability of commodity at a certain price, certain place, and certain time. Now we move to kinds of demand. Demand may be classified into different based on the consumer behavior, based on the purpose, based on the relationship, and with other goods we can classify demand in different patterns. Okay, different kinds. Now let's start with the first one, price demand. Price demand means various quantities of commodity which the consumer will buy per unit of time at a certain price. At certain price, other things remains the same. As the price falls, quantity demand increases. As the price gains, the quantity demand decreases. That is called as price demand. So demand for a product is based on its price. All other things are remains constant. Okay. And next one is income demand. Income demand indicates the relationship between income and the demand of the consumer. Income demand shows how much quantity of a consumer will buy at a different levels of his income. Generally, there is a positive relationship between income and demand. Okay, whereas in case of price demand, there is a negative relationship between price and demand. Income is a positive relationship between the demand of between the income and demand of the consumer. So for a normal goods, the demand increases with the income, whereas for inferior goods, the demand decreases with the income. That is called as income demand. Next, cross demand. What do you mean by cross demand? Demand for a product is based on the price changes of a related goods, like a substitute or a complementary goods. What is substitute goods? Substitute goods are nothing but tea and coffee. Price of a coffee is increases. The demand for tea is also increases. Whereas in case of complementary goods like car and petrol, the price of a petrol is increases, the demand for cars decreases. This is called as cross demand. Next one is joint demand. Joint demand means when two or more goods are used together to satisfy a single want. Okay, example printer and ink cartridge, like that one. If we need one thing, the other thing also need to fulfill this desire. That is called as joint demand. Composite demand. Composite demand is nothing but when a thing is demanded for two or many other purposes. The demand for a coal or rubber is a composite demand. Okay. And other examples like electricity. We use lighting, heating, appliances, everything under electricity. This is a composite demand. Next, derived demand. Derived demand is nothing but it is arises from a demand for another related good. Okay, demand is arises from the demand for another related good. That is example, demand for labor is derived from the demand for the goods that the labor helps to produce. That is called as derived demand. Direct and indirect demand. So direct demand means the direct and indirect demand. Goods which satisfy human wants is called as direct demand. And in contrary, indirect demand means goods satisfy human wants indirectly is known as indirect demand. The demand for factors of production as is an indirect demand, like a raw material, machine, labor, etc. This is all about kinds of demand. Next, next we are going to discuss about factors affecting demand. There are several factors that affects demand. Okay, some of these factors are listed below. Those things are, first one is prices of related goods. Demand for a commodity is also influenced by changes in the prices of related goods. These goods are two types, Substitute goods and complementary goods. So already we discussed in kinds of demand what is substitute and what is complementary. Substitute goods are those goods which can replace with other goods like tea and coffee, like that. Complementary goods are those goods which are jointly demanded as a petrol and car. If the prices of the car increases, the demand for car will fall. Along with it, demand for petrol will also fall, and vice versa. This is called as prices of related goods. Next one is income of the consumer. Okay, the income of the consumers also affects the demand. Generally, there is a direct relationship between income and consumer demand. Demand for consumers. Okay, the demand for the normal goods increases with the increase in the income and falls with the fall in income. Okay, in case of inferior goods, the demand falls within an increase in income and rises with the decrease in income. That is called as a inferior goods. The income of the consumer is also related with the demand for necessaries of life, inexpensive goods, etc. In case of necessity like salt, milk, etc., the demand remains constant with the change in income. Okay, that is called as income demand. And the distribution of wealth. The amount demanded of a commodity is also influenced by distribution of wealth in the society. If there is an equal distribution of income in the society, the demand will be higher. In case of inequality, demand will be less. Next one, taste and preferences. The taste and preferences of the consumer also influence the demand to a greater extent. It includes fashion, habits, customs, advertisement, climate, new inventions, etc. Other things being equal, as the taste of the commodity goes up, the demand will increases, and vice versa. In the government policy also influences the demand for a commodity. The government imposes taxes on various commodities, which leads to an increase in the prices of the commodity. As a result, demand goes down. The state of business. The demand for a commodity also depends on business conditions prevailing in the country or a region. If the country is passing through the period of boom, there will be an increase in the market demand. During the period of depression, the market demand will be on lower side. Next one is population growth. The growth of a population is also another important determinant to influence the demand of a commodity. Increase in the population leads to increase in the demand for all types of goods, whereas a decrease in population means less demand for such a commodities. And next one, taxation. The demand for commodity is also influenced by the nature and size of the taxes. When more and more taxes are imposed, the disposable income of the people falls, which reduces the demand for goods and vice versa. And the next one is selling cost. The demand for commodity in the modern world is also affected by the amount of selling costs. Selling costs are those costs which rise the demand for the commodities. It includes the costs on advertisement, publicity, sales, technicians, etc. Next one is expectations about future changes in the prices. The demand for commodity is also affected by the expectation of the future changes in the prices. If people expect that there will be a rise in the prices of certain goods in the future, they will buy more even at a higher price in the present time. Like that, the demand is created. Next one is the population. If the population increases, the demand for commodities obviously increases. Next, climate and weather conditions. There are several factors that influence demand for the commodity. Like in a seasonal products also, the demand for the product increases, and like in summer season, the product like AC, cooler, and etc., those freezing items, things are created demand for those products. And the last one is money supply. The supply of money is also determine the purchasing power of money. When there is a more money supply, people acquire more purchasing power, and vice versa. It's all about factors affecting on demand. Next, we are going to discuss about the demand function. Demand, what is demand? Already we discussed in the previous slides. Now we are going to discuss about a demand function. Demand function is a mathematical expression that shows the relationship between the quantity demanded of a good and its determinants such as price, income, taste, and prices of related goods. Thus, the consumer's demand function can be written as QD is equal to F of function of price of the good, income of the consumer, PR means price of related goods, T taste and preferences of the consumer, and A is advertisement or other influencing factors. You may consider any factor that according to your demand function. Okay, this demand function helps us to understand how demand changes when these factors changes. The next topic is law of demand. Law of demand is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. Before going to discuss about law of demand, we discuss about demand schedule and curve. Demand schedule means it's a response of amount demanded to change in prices of a commodity. There are different two types of demand schedules are the individual demand schedule, market demand schedule. Depends upon if the price of unit is increases, the quantity demanded decreases. It's a vice versa. Okay, then law of demand is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. It states the relationship between the quantity demanded and price. It explains the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. The amount demanded increases with the fall in prices and diminishes with the rise in prices. It means there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Demand for schedule. If the price of the commodity is increases, the quantity demanded is decreases. If the price of the commodity is increases, the quantity demanded is decreases. If the price of the commodity decreases, the quantity demanded is increases. There are some other explanation of the law. Some expectations to the law of demand. Given goods. Given goods means poor quality goods where the higher prices may increase the demand. The other goods like Veblen goods, prestigious or luxury goods, these are example diamond and all this, where higher prices may mean higher demand. Future expectations of goods. If a consumer expect price to rise further, they may be buy today more even at a high price. In such a case, also demand for the product is increases. Necessities demand remains stable regardless of prices, like necessity products to survive daily life like salt, insulin, milk, etc. These are some of the products never ever ended demand. The next concept is elasticity of demand. The concept of price elasticity of demand was first introduced by Dr. Marshall in his famous book Principles of Economics, but the idea was evolved by the economists like Conant and J.S. Mill. What is exactly the elasticity of demand? Is the ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded to percentage change in price. Means if the percentage change in quantity demand is changes, the percentage change in prices also changes. The price elasticity of demand is a measure of relative change in quantity purchased of a good in response to relative change in its price. The rate at which the demand changes to a given change in price. It means the rate, a degree of response in demand to the change in price. It is defined as, it is expressed in equation form is as price of the ED. ED we can represent it as a price elasticity of demand, proportionate change in demand by proportionate change in price, or percentage change in quantity demanded by percentage change in price. Symbolically we can represent it as ED. An elastic demand or elastic supply are one of supplies, one in which elasticity is greater than 1. There are different types of degrees of price elasticity demands are there. Those are perfectly elastic demand, perfectly inelastic demand, unitary elastic demand, relatively elastic demand, relatively inelastic demand. In the next slide, we're going to discuss about in detail what are the degrees or types of price elasticity of demand. Next, we are going to discuss about the degrees of price elasticity of demand. There are 5 types of price elasticity of demand. One is perfectly elastic demand, elastic demand, elastic demand, unitary elastic demand, inelastic demand, perfectly inelastic demand. First one is perfectly elastic demand. For this perfectly elastic demand, a small rise in price on a part of the seller reduces the demand to zero. That is called as perfectly elastic. A small change in demand lead to infinite change in price. Is that percentage change in quantity by percentage change in price. Its value is infinity. That the shape is horizontal shape. And the elastic demand. Elastic demand is to situation in which a small change in price lead to big change in quantity demanded. In such a case, the elastic demand is said to be more than one. Okay. Highly response to price. The graph shows like a flat downward slope. Unitary elastic demand. It is said to be unitary elastic when a given proportionate change in price level brings about an equal proportionate change in quantity demand. So the price and demand both are in equal manner. So that's why it's numerically it can be expressed as a ED is equal to 1. The value is 1 and the curve is the slope is a rectangular hyperbola curve. Next, inelastic demand. Inelastic demand in a given percentage change in price produces relatively less percentage change in quantity demand. In such a case, the elastic demand is said to be less than 1. Is less than 1. The curve is vertical steep downward curve. Next, perfectly inelastic demand. It is opposite to perfectly elastic demand, under which irrespective of any rise or fall in price of a commodity, the quantity demanded remains the same. Elasticity of demand is in this case will be equal to 0. There is no change in demand regardless of price. Its curve is vertical demand curve. These are all the different types of price elasticity of demand. Next, determinants of price elasticity of demand. What are all the factors that influence price elasticity of demand? First one, nature of commodity. Generally, all commodities can be divided into 3 categories: necessary commodities, conventional commodities, luxury commodities. Necessity commodities are required for our daily survival of the life. Necessities like rice, salt, clothes, etc. Those are very available at a cheaper rate and needed for everybody. Conventional necessities is less elastic and inelastic. The example for these the products are drunkards consume opium, wine, almost all the necessity as a food and water, etc. Luxury commodities. These are not required for all the people. Those are usually elastic as the people buy more of them at a lower price, less at higher prices. Demand for luxury product like silk, perfumes, ornaments increases at a lower price, diminishes at a higher price. Next, these products also influence the one of the factor that influence the elasticity of demand. Next one, substitutes. Demand is elastic for those goods which have a substitute and inelastic for those goods which have no substitutes. Number of uses. The number of uses of goods also influence the demand, elasticity of demand. Having number of use like milk, coal, electricity, etc. is more elastic. Coal is used for cooking, heating, power generation, etc. If price of coal falls, the demand will increases from all sides. On the contrary, vice versa. Next factor is postponement. Demand is more elastic for goods, the use of which can be postponed. Example, the price of silk rises, its consumption can be postponed. The demand for silk is therefore elastic. The demand is inelastic for those goods which is urgent and immediately required, it cannot be postponed, like medicines, etc. Durable goods. Elasticity of demand is also influence durability of goods. When the goods are durable like TV, car, etc., the demand is inelastic. Uh, as the people do not buy more of these commodities when the price falls. Next one is price level. The demand is elastic for moderate rises but inelastic for lower and higher prices. The rich and poor do not bother about the prices of the goods that they buy. The example, rich buy Banaras silk and diamonds, etc. at any price. But the poor people buy coarse rice, cloths, etc. whatever their prices are. Next one is income level. The demand is inelastic for higher and lower income groups and elastic for middle income groups. The rich people with their higher income do not bother about the price. Next one is habits. The demand for those good is inelastic to which are habitual. For example, cigarettes, coffee, etc. In case of higher prices, the smokes doesn't smoker less. And the next one, nature of expenditure. The elasticity of demand for a commodity also depends as how much part of income is spent on that particular commodity. Next one, distribution of income. If the income is uniformly distributed in a society, a small change in price will affect demand for whole society, and the demand will be elastic. In case of unequal distribution of income and wealth, a change in price will hardly influence the poor section of the society and the demand will be relatively inelastic. Next, joint demand. In case of commodity being demanded jointly, such as car and petrol, its elasticity will be directly governed by the elasticity of other commodity which are jointly demanded in the market. Next and the last one is time. A time plays a key role in influencing the elasticity of demand of a particular commodity. It implies that elasticity of demand varies with the length of time periods. In case of long period, elasticity of demand will be elastic, while in short period, demand will be inelastic. These are all some of the determinants of price elasticity of demand. At the end of the session, it's an activity given to students to understand the demand, law of demand, elasticity of demand. The title of this activity is Market Day. Create your own dashboard or create your own demand curve. The main objective is to help students to understand the law of demand and how price affects quantity demanded through a role play simulation. For this purpose, you can use a material like fake currency, product cards, demand recording sheets, whiteboard or chart paper, etc. At the end of this activity, you can able to create your own demand curve and understand how it effectively, efficiently works through. Thank you.